everyone, welcome back to GradeUp. My name is Dbms. In this video lecture, we were studying database management system. Until now, we have completed almost each and every topic. Now we are studying the last topic in our database management system, that is transaction and concurrency control. The subtopic which we are going to start today is locking protocols. In our last video lecture, we just completed recoverability. So guys, till now we have studied schedules, serializability and recoverability. And you know why we move towards serializability and recoverability. So in this particular video lecture, we will start with locking protocols. Guys, I am gonna follow the same sequence which I always follow. That is, before starting the new topic, I should know why I am moving toward this particular topic. I should know the basic, why it is required to study this thing. So guys, I have already told you that we are having two types of schedules. That is, first one is serial schedule and second one is concurrent schedule. And when you are going to execute any concurrent schedule, the basic problem which a system faces that there are some concurrent schedules which may lead to wrong results. And our concurrency controller in database management system should be able to stop the execution of those concurrent schedules. For this purpose, we studied about serializability, and for atomicity and durability of our transaction system, we studied about recoverability. So the basic goal of a concurrency controller in database management system is, we can say, it should not allow execution of any schedule which is non-serializable and not strict recoverable. Because if a schedule is not serializable and not strict recoverable, then it may lead to incorrect results and inconsistency in our database system. So, we have studied what is a serializable schedule, but we don't know how to achieve this serializability in our system. We just know how to check whether a schedule is serializable or not. And how we are going to achieve this thing in our system is by using locking protocols. And this is the reason we are studying locking protocols. So let us actually start with locking protocols. The first thing which we are going to study in locking protocols is lock. Basically, what is lock? Lock is a variable which we use to identify the status of a particular data item. What I am saying is, in our concurrent schedules, we are allowing execution of two transactions parallelly and simultaneously. That is, we are allowing our two transactions to access a particular data item simultaneously. If we are having some data item X and transaction T1 wants to write it, it can write. And if transaction T2 also wants to write that particular data item, we are allowing that particular transaction to write that data item X in our concurrent execution of transactions. So this is the reason we are getting problem of isolation, inconsistency and so many other things in our database system. So how we are going to ensure that consistency of database is maintained? We are going to use a lock variable for each and every data item. How we are going to use it? Suppose I am having some data item X, I will use lock of X. How it is going to work? How will it work? See, if a particular transaction T1 wants to use this data item X, wants to access this data item X, it will request our concurrency controller in database management system that I want to use this particular data item. Then our concurrency controller is going to check whether some other transaction is using it or not. If some other transaction is using that particular data item or accessing that particular data item, then access to this particular data item is denied. But if this data item is free, it is not used by some other transaction at this moment of time, then access will be granted. The same thing I have written here. See, if the lock is granted by concurrency controller, then data item can be accessed. The transaction can access that particular data item. It can read that data item or write that data item according to its need. And if lock is denied, that is concurrency controller has not provided you lock on that data item, then you should wait for accessing of that data item. Transaction is going to wait for accessing that particular data item. This is how a lock variable works for providing access of a particular data item. Let us move towards modes of locking. How we are going to lock our data item. There are basically two modes for locking, single mode of locking and multi-mode of locking. In single mode of locking, what we are going to do, suppose this transaction T1 wants to read data item A. Then I'll acquire a lock on A. Because till now, no other transaction is using this particular data item. Suppose a new transaction came, it just came into active state and it is also willing to access this particular data item A. And this transaction T2, when made a request to our concurrency controller, it is going to deny to grant lock because it cannot it cannot provide you access for this data item because it is already locked and used by some other transaction. So this happens in our single mode of locking. That is, if you want to read or write your data item, you will request to your concurrency controller. If that item is free, then you are allowed to access it, otherwise denied. So, but if you observe, there is a problem with this type of locking. Observe this transaction T1, suppose it want to access data item A for read purpose. It just want to read data item A and a new transaction came, it also want to read our data item A. But this time concurrency controller will not allow transaction T2 to read that data item. But if you observe, read and read cannot lead to any inconsistency in your database system because no updates and no changes has been made. But because of single mode of locking, what we are getting into the result, we are getting low degree of concurrency. Where here degree of concurrency is very low. Even two transactions, if they want to read that data item, they are not allowed to read the data item simultaneously. So, is this a good idea? Yes, using this particular thing, there will be no chance of inconsistency of your database. But it is not a good idea because you are providing low degree of concurrency, then more response time for processes and less utilization of resources. So what we can say about single mode of locking, it is not a good idea. Then we came with a new technique which is known as multi-mode locking. Here locking is provided in two manners. One is shared lock, other one is exclusive lock. Whenever a transaction T1 wants to access a particular data item A, it will make a request to our concurrency controller. And if request is made to read that data item, then concurrency controller will grant you a shared lock. But if you want to write that particular data item, that is you want to update that data item, then exclusive lock will be granted by our concurrency controller. So in multi-mode locking, we are having two modes for locking. One is shared lock and another one is exclusive lock. Shared lock for reading of particular data item and exclusive lock for write over that data item. So now see how we are getting how we are improving our concurrency by using this mode of locking. Suppose see some transaction T1 wants to access data item A and transaction T2 also wants to access data item A. Suppose transaction T1 wants to access our data item A for read purpose as well as T2 also wants to read data item A. So concurrency controller will grant shared lock to transaction T1 and shared lock to transaction T2 over data item A, and both the transactions can read data item A concurrently. Then degree of concurrency is quite high here and utilization of resources is good. But suppose transaction T1 wants to write data item A and T2 wants to read that data item A. So for transaction T1, exclusive lock is required and for transaction T2, shared lock is required. But it is not possible to grant these two locks to different transactions at a time. That is, if a transaction is demanding exclusive lock and other one is demanding shared lock, both cannot be granted over same data item at a time. Same thing, if T2 demands exclusive lock and T1 demands shared lock, both cannot be granted at a time. Exclusive lock, both cannot be granted at a time. This is also known as compatibility matrix for locks. One more thing, if you observe here, we are not granting shared and exclusive lock together. That is, we are not allowing to read and write together, write, read together, and write, write together. So if you observe, we have managed to remove all these conflict pairs from our transaction system or schedule. That is, we are not allowing now to execute any of these conflict pairs in our schedule. This is how multi-mode locking works. Let us see an example how we are going to use locking in our system. See, here this transaction T1 wants to write data item A. So which type of lock it is needing, or it needs exclusive lock. So first of all, it will request for lock. It will acquire a exclusive lock over data item A. Now it can write data item A. Now observe, transaction T2 wants to read data item, and transaction T2 is going to request our concurrency controller for reading data item A. But our concurrency controller cannot grant a lock because it is used by our transaction T1. So for granting a lock to transaction T2, T1 should unlock data item A. Suppose here the use of transaction T1 for data item A finishes, it unlocks the data item A. Then after unlocking of data item A, transaction T2 will acquire a shared lock on data item A. After using it, next thing which is required by this particular schedule is reading of data item B by transaction T2. It can acquire shared lock on data item B because no other transaction is using data item B. Next, transaction T1 requires to acquire a exclusive lock on data item B, but it cannot be granted until T2 unlock data item B. So T2 doesn't need data item B anymore, so it can unlock data item B here, and a lock, exclusive lock, can be granted to transaction T1, and transaction T1 can access our data item A. After accessing it, it can unlock data item B and it can unlock data item A. So in this manner, accessing or granting and denying of lock happens, and in this manner concurrency controller grants lock to the transactions. See here, we are having transaction T1 and T2 and we have applied locking. So we have applied locking and locking has been done. So what we expect here, this schedule will be a serializable schedule or strict recoverable schedule. That is, if locks are used to access a particular data item and locks are used for executing a schedule, then that schedule should be our serializable schedule. But if you observe here, if you want to draw the precedence graph for this particular schedule, guys, you know how to draw a precedence graph now. See, this precedence graph is going to have a cycle. Then what we can say, this schedule is not serializable, but still it is allowed by our locking protocol. So the purpose of using locking protocol satisfied here? No. Purpose of using locking is not satisfied. Then why we are studying these locks if it is still allowing to execute some non-serializable schedule? Why? Yes, this is the reason. The reason is whenever you want a data item, you are acquiring lock. When use of that data item finishes, you are unlocking that data item, acquiring, unlocking. There is no sequence of locking and unlocking of data item. So this is not the proper use of lock variable. And if you are going to use lock variable in such manner, then you cannot achieve serializability. So, to achieve serializability, what we use here is two-phase locking. What we have to do, what is the improvement in two-phase locking? See, what two-phase locking says, ki whatever transaction you are going to execute, two-phase locking and unlocking can be done only in two phases. First one is growing phase and second one is shrinking phase. What 2PL says, whatever data item you want to lock, just lock it before unlocking of data item. Once you start unlocking of data items, you cannot acquire lock on any of the data item. That is, in one phase, you are going to lock the data item, and in other phase, you are going to unlock the data item. Once you start unlocking, you are not allowed to lock some other data item again. So, you are going to work in two phases. First one, that is, you will start locking your data items, and in second phase, you will start unlocking of the data item. See how this works. Here, we are given a schedule. Test whether the given schedule is allowed by 2PL or not. First of all, see this particular schedule, WARA. What is the precedence graph for this particular schedule? T1 to T2. That is, it is serializable. See, I want to acquire lock by using two-phase protocol, and I have to check whether this particular schedules allow two-phase locking or not. So, the basic rule of two-phase locking is you have to acquire all the lock in one phase and then unlock the data item in next phase. In this particular phase, see transaction T1 in this particular schedule, transaction T1 wants to write data item A. It wants to write data item A, then the lock which is needed here is exclusive lock. Then I am going to acquire a exclusive lock. The next operation is read A by transaction T2. Transaction T2 will make a request over concurrency controller for granting a lock, but T2 has to wait because data item A is used by our transaction T1. So you are thinking like this transaction T1 does not need data item A. Afterwards, then I can unlock it here. But keep one thing in your mind, once you start unlocking the data items, you are not allowed to lock any of the data item again. But observe, you need WB. That is, you need a lock on data item B. Then you should acquire lock on data item B before unlocking of data item A. Then what you are going to do here? First of all, you are going to acquire lock on data item B, which will be an exclusive lock, because the operation which we are going to perform is write operation. Then unlock data item A over here. Afterward, this transaction will lock data item A in our schedule and can access data item A. Now, the next operation is write operation on B. Transaction T1 has already taken and occupied a exclusive lock on our data item B, so it is allowed to perform this particular operation. Then, till now, we will start unlocking of data item B in our transaction T1, and now transaction T2 will start unlocking of data item B here. So, what we can say, this schedule is allowed by 2PL and it is serializable. Now you are clear how to check whether a schedule is allowed by 2PL or not. And let us study some conclusions over 2PL. What we can say, if you are going to use 2PL for your transaction system and if your schedule is allowed by two-phase locking, then it is guaranteed to be serializable, but it does not guarantee recoverability. So in our last example, you can clearly observe this thing. This schedule with transaction T1 and T2 is not a recoverable schedule. You can clearly see T2 is making a uncommitted read. So it is not recoverable, but it is still allowed by our 2PL protocol. So what we can say, 2PL can guarantee about serializability, but we cannot make any comment about recoverability of a particular schedule. The next conclusion, what this 2PL protocol says, that is cyclic precedence in schedule is never allowed by 2PL. That is, if we are going to have some schedule where first T1 is having some conflicts with T2 and T2 is also having some conflicts with T1. These type of schedules are never allowed by our two-phase locking protocol. Third thing is, if schedule S is not conflict serializable, then it is not allowed by 2PL. That is, if a schedule is not conflict serializable, that it will never be allowed by our two-phase protocol. So till now we have studied two-phase protocol. It guarantees serializability, but we cannot make any comment on recoverability. So guys, but for our correctness of our database system, we need recoverability too. So we have to make some updates in our two-phase protocol. The update which is made to two-phase protocol is strict two-phase protocol, which guarantees serializability and recoverability of our particular schedule and transaction system. See, one thing, we have already discussed the one of the drawback of our two-phase protocol is schedule may or may not be strict recoverable. Two more drawbacks are it may lead to deadlock or starvation. What do you mean by deadlock is, suppose there may be some transaction which is waiting for infinite time for allocation of resources, but it will not allow or locks are not granted by our concurrency controller. Then two-phase locking can also lead to deadlock and starvation also. You know, starvation means unbounded waiting for allocation of resources. A particular transaction has to wait for a very long time for allocation of resources. These are the some limitations of our two-phase protocol. But the improvement which has been provided is strict two-phase locking. What strict two-phase locking says, see, in our two-phase locking what we have, we are allowed to lock our data items in one phase and then unlocking in some other phase. What strict locking says, see, every exclusive lock should be maintained till the commit and rollback of transaction. That is, you are not allowed to unlock the data items which has acquired exclusive locks. You have to maintain all the exclusive lock till the commit of our or rollback of our transaction. This strict 2PL guarantees conflict serializability as well as strict recoverability. But two problems, it also suffers from two problems. One is starvation and deadlock. Yes, strict 2PL can also lead to starvation and deadlock of the transaction system. So let us discuss a previous year question on this particular topic. In this particular question, we are provided with a schedule having two transactions, transaction T1 and T2, and it is asked whether this schedule is serializable and can occur using 2PL protocol, whether it is allowed by 2PL or not. So before starting with 2PL protocol, we should check whether it is serializable or not, because if some schedule is not serializable, it is never allowed by 2PL, and then we have not to worry for checking about 2PL protocol. So let us check for serializability first. See, for this particular schedule, if I want to check for serializability, what I am gonna do, I'll make a precedence graph here. In precedence graph, we are going to have two vertices, T1 and T2. Let us check for conflict pairs. Start with first operation, read of A in transaction T1. Check for the conflict, that is write of A. If there is some pair like read write, write read, write write, then only conflict happens. We will check for write of A in our transaction T2. Observe this transaction T2 is having write of A. Then there exists a conflict pair between T1 and T2. Let us check for some conflict pair from T2 to T1. Observe the second operation is read of B. Check for write of B operation in our transaction T1. Observe, we are having a operation write of B in our transaction T1. then we are going to have an H from T2 to T1. And there exists a cycle in our precedence graph. And if our precedence graph is containing a cycle, then it is not serializable. And if not serializable, then not allowed by two-phase locking protocol. So which option is correct here? Yes, option D. This schedule is not serializable and cannot occur using two-phase locking protocol. So guys, in this particular video lecture, we just finished locking protocol. Till now, we have covered almost each and every topic on our transaction and concurrency control. In our next video lecture, we are going to study some previous year questions which were asked in GATE CS upon transaction and concurrency control topic. So guys, if you are having some doubts, so you can comment down below, and practice and practice and practice is the key for your success. So just practice a lot of questions. Thank you, and thank you for watching this video. Stay updated and tuned for more videos. Thank you again, and all the best for your future.